Hi everyone, thanks for joining. I hope you're enjoying the tunes in the background. We're just going to start in about 5 minutes, so thanks for being on time. Feel free to bring your coffee cups and your water nearby, and we'll get started soon. And I just put some reminders in the chat box. Please change your name so we know what area of Michigan you're from and what school you may be representing or organization. And also, if you'd like to turn on your camera, we'd love to see your faces bright and early in the morning. Well, kind of early in the morning. So yeah, I'm gonna shut up now, and then I will put some music on for a little bit longer. everyone. Can you guys hear me okay? Thumbs up. Awesome. My name is Sumaya Ahmed Sheikh, and I am the Michigan coordinator of Campus Vote Project. Thank you so much for joining us today at our part 2 of our Michigan Student Voting Summit, Day of Action. We're really excited for this program from 10 to 12 to really just get into the thick of the work, to make sure to pass along the resources and have those discussions that you all need to get the work done with these very short couple months left till elections. To remind you about some of the work that Campus Vote Project does, we are a national organization based out of the Fair Election Center here in Michigan, which you'll hear from a little bit later. I'm blessed with an amazing partner, Hira Khan, who is our Michigan Deputy Coordinator, that both of us work together to do this on the ground work. The one word that I really use to describe the work that CVP does is institutionalize. Our main focus is to make sure that we institutionalize this voting work on campus so students across Michigan have access and the ability to get out the vote with ease. With that said, I'd like to thank some of our really important partners that helped make this summit possible, as well as a lot of the resources that you're going to be receiving today, starting with the Michigan Secretary of State's office. Thank you specifically, Sally and Sarah and your team on the call for helping us put this together and just really being an amazing partner in getting this work done. And also the Secretary of State, which we'll be hearing later today. Thank you for advocating for this work and really putting an importance on it to get it done. Secondly, I'd like to thank Ryan Drysdale from the All In Challenge. Thank you for you and your team, for one, allowing us to use your Zoom platform to do this, but then two, also just being an amazing resource and really being those on-the-ground fighters to get this work done. And then third, Aaron Burns from the Big Ten Voting Challenge. U of M support is always very critical in getting this work done, especially that institutionalized and educational piece that we all really need. And then lastly, to my team here at CVP, I'm going to shout out some of our fellows that are on the call: Madeline Dale, Ian Berlin, Jeremy Johnson, Carly Harbon, Maxwell Barmek, and Kaylee Sosa. They were our fellows who really put a lot of time and effort in getting this done, and you'll hear from them a little bit later today. Hopefully I didn't miss anyone. With that said, thank you so much, and I'd like to welcome my Deputy Coordinator, Hira Khan, to just give you a rundown of what the 2 hours is going to look like.
Thank you so much, Sumaya. Good morning, everyone. As Sumaya mentioned, my name is Hira Khan. I am the Deputy Coordinator for Michigan with CVP. I just wanted to thank you all, first of all, for being on the call today. We understand that it's a very busy time. The school year is just starting, and we really appreciate that you took the time out to come to the summit, and we hope that it's going to be a really great and informative presentation for you today. I just wanted to go over some basic guidelines before we start. If you haven't done so already, please change your name on Zoom. You can change it to your name and your campus. You can, if we're able to get the camera working, please feel free to turn on your camera if you feel comfortable doing so. Just want to remind you all to make sure to mute when you're not speaking. And I know it's going to be a very packed and busy morning. We have a lot of stuff to go through, so definitely keep your water and coffee close by. And if you have any questions that are not for any of the panelists, feel free to privately message Ian Berlin, Madeline Dale, Sumaya, or myself through the Zoom chat box. Yeah, so I'm just going to go ahead and give us a little outline of our agenda for today. So Sumaya, can we just get to the next slide? Great. Yeah, so to begin our morning, I'm just going to briefly go over our agenda. We just finished our introductions. Soon we will have our Secretary of State, Jocelyn Benson, join us to speak a little bit to you guys. After that, we plan on rolling out all the items for the Michigan Students Vote campaign, which I think is going to be really exciting and like a set of informative tools for you guys. So I'm really looking forward to that. Then we're going to follow that with a 10-minute break from between 10:50 to 11. So we'll resume the summit around 11 o'clock with Michigan election law. and we'll follow that with some student voter engagement strategies. And then we're going to end the event with some Q&A with our student panel and a short thinking exercise and some closing remarks. So yeah, it's a packed day. We're going to try to keep as close to schedule as possible to be respectful of your time. Yeah.
We just have a couple minutes before the presentation begins and our program starts. And before that, I'd love to, I just wanted to point out, I just realized that I think we're fixing the back end issue of letting attendees go ahead and turn cameras on. So that's being worked on right now. But in the meantime, if, like Kira said, if you have any questions throughout the summit that you've been really wanting to ask, or if you have things that you want to make sure that are addressed during our time together, feel free to drop it in the chat box, and Kira and I will make sure that our panelists, get those questions and you get those answered, because as we said, it's really important that we're able to kind of be ready for the elections ahead, and we want to make sure that everyone feels comfortable doing so. Does anyone have any questions in regards right now? Feel free to drop it that you want to make sure that is discussed in the summit, or any technical issues you may be having. I can help you out in the meantime in the next couple minutes. Okay, great. Since we have a few minutes, I'd love for our fellows to introduce themselves and let you all know what campus they represent, and maybe one line of, what is really important to them about doing this work. So you kind of get, some familiar faces of the students on the ground who make this possible. I'm going to go ahead and call Madeline Dale, if you want to introduce yourself first.
Hi, my name's Madeline Dale. I go to Lake Michigan College, so I'm down in the Southwest. The reason why I wanted to be a CVP fellow is because for me, making sure that people are well informed of why to vote and how to vote is very important to me ever since I was really little.
Awesome. Thanks, Madeline. Thanks for all your hard work. And I think we have Ian on the call as well.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ian Berlin from Oakland University. The reason I joined CVP and are doing the work in this is just because I think it's really important for people to have the chance to vote. I see a lot of excitement on campus, and I just want to be able to help the students get to where they want to be with voting and make it as easy as possible for them.
Thanks, Ian. I'm trying to see if we have anyone else. Okay, well, since it's going to be a packed 2 hours, I'll for 1 minute. Oh, we have Carly that's on the call. Give me 1 second. I'll give her access. Hi, Carly. Welcome to the call. We're just, the CVP fellows were just introducing themselves. If you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Carly. I'm currently a senior at University of Michigan Flint, and I joined Campus Vote Project because I wanted to make education about voting easily accessible.
Thank you to our fellows and our team again. For this last minute, we'll go ahead and thank you to everyone who's sending in their questions. We have a lot. So Sally and Christy, you guys have a big job ahead to answer all these questions, but I'm sure you guys are going to do an amazing job. I'm just going to go ahead and, put on some music for like 1 minute before the Secretary of State gets on, so everyone can just, decompress for another 30 seconds before we get started. Okay, so we've made a quick executive decision to go ahead and just start the program, the next topic that we had on ready to go, and then when the Secretary of State joins us, we can go ahead and transition into that. So with that said, I'm really excited with our partners who've been working on this for a while now to introduce the Michigan Students Vote campaign. Give me one second, I'm just going to change the slide here. So the Michigan Students Vote campaign was designed to host student voter engagement resources that administrators, students, and partners can use to help get out the vote leading up to elections. So throughout the past couple months, especially during our time here in COVID, when we were kind of just brainstorming with the Secretary of State's office and some of our other partners, like Aaron from U of M and Ryan, we were brainstorming what is really the next thing that we can do to take this work to the next level, to make sure that students and administrators really had all of the resources that they needed to get this work done. And we recognize, especially because of COVID, there are just so many administrators and students who have so many other things to worry about, to produce, to now change to hybrid programming, that we wanted to make sure that we could provide something that would kind of help lessen that load. And then also we realized, we're not students anymore, so how is it that we can get this information? So we worked really closely with the Michigan Student Voting Council. There was a group of students that was devised, and we worked with them to see what are really those areas that you would want to see covered in a toolkit or a website, or a community or campus engagement calendar. And based off those ideas and thoughts and the ones that we had kind of brewing after talking to administrators and students, we came up with the Michigan Students Vote campaign that we're really excited to put out today. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so you can see that. So if you can all see on your screen right now, here is the Michigan Students Vote campaign. This is a toolkit that we'll be rolling out and that all of you will receive after this call. The table of contents right over here, the things that are encompassed in this toolkit, there's a lot, but hopefully, as we said, it's information that's going to help everyone do this work. So as you can see in the introduction here, there's a lot of things that are going to be covered, starting with the safe, secure, and accessible elections, just an overview about making sure that we're safe in getting out the vote, key messages, important dates and deadlines, important links, a campus engagement calendar, which Hiro will walk you through a little bit later, sample newsletters, sample emails, sample social media posts that you all can really just extract and put onto your social media platforms, graphics, which we'll walk you through a little bit later as well, and you can see where all of those are hosted. And then, of course, really important voter information that is catered around kind of the general things that we should know as voters, but also those burning questions that students have. So really walking through the process of registering to vote, same-day voter registration, absentee voting, frequently asked questions, and then some of the additional resources, which are ballot guides and resources from our partners. This toolkit will be hosted on a website, which Sally will be able to talk to you about a little bit later. So you'll be able to see where it will be hosted, but also it's going to be a living document. So it's going to be hosted in Google Drive, which you'll have access to. And the reason we decided to also do that was because there's so many moving parts to this and so many great partner organizations who are always creating new pieces and resources that are really beneficial to students. So we wanted to make sure that we were able to continue editing that piece and constantly putting more information in here for you all. So I'm going to go ahead and start kind of just walking through the toolkit a little. And Sally and Hira, who are going to be presenting with me later today, or in a minute, not later today, feel free to chime in if I'm missing anything important as I walk through it. Oh, actually, I think we just have the Secretary of State who just joined us, so give me 1 second and we can get her on here. Okay, I'm going to pass it over to Hira so she can introduce the Secretary of State who just joined the call.
Great, thank you, Smaya. So I am very excited to introduce our next speaker. For the past year and a half, she's been serving as the Secretary of State for Michigan. She's someone who's been incredibly active and to marathon here, while also for the protection of elections and accessible voting and education. And given her drive and professional experience and involvement with civic engagement, there really is no better person fit to speak at our summit today. So it's my pleasure to introduce Secretary Benson. Feel free to unmute for a second if you'd like to give her a round of applause, or you can press the applause reaction on Zoom to give her a warm welcome. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone, and great to be here and see so many of you virtually and be talking with you about really the critical opportunity you all have to make a real difference this year. We've got, as you know, just about 60 days until a really historical opportunity for you to influence the future of not just our country, but our state as well, because as you know, there are issues being decided at every level in state government and local government, and of course at the federal level. So I really want to, encourage, thank you for being a part of this summit. Thank you for the work that you are doing to ensure your campuses are informed, and know that my office stands with you to ensure we're doing everything we can to get you the tools you need to make sure your voices are heard and the voices of your fellow students. We know this looks different than any other semester that you've been in, and certainly any other election that we've experienced. But let me give you the certainty that you all have options to vote this year. Those options include voting by mail, receiving your ballot through the mail and returning it through the mail. You can also receive your ballot in the mail and return it at a drop box, at your local drop box or at your local clerk's office. You can go to your local clerk's office and get a ballot and return it right there. And also, of course, you can vote in your home precinct on election day. We've also implemented a statewide ballot tracking system, so you can check to see when your ballot's been sent to you and then when it's been received by your clerk and get that confirmation that it was received on time. And we're also doing everything we can to really adjust and adapt to the reality for many of you, whether you're learning from home or involved in on-campus learning. We want to, bring our democracy to you, and we need your help in telling us how to best do that to your fellow students. The work over these next 60 days for elections really falls along 3 areas. Number one, it's making sure everyone gets registered. You can check your registration, everyone can, at michigan.gov/vote. You have the ability to also work with your fellow students to either register them online if they have a state ID or driver's license through that portal, or you can download a paper application to register if you don't yet have a driver's license or a state ID for Michigan, and register and get on the rolls. You actually have up until election day, as many of you know, to register. And of course, in the last 2 weeks and on election day, you have to register in your local clerk's office. But for many of you, your local clerks are fully aware of the unique needs and challenges that you all are facing. And we've spoken with the clerks in Grand Rapids, in Kalamazoo, in East Lansing, in Ann Arbor, and elsewhere, Ypsilanti, to basically make sure that and confirm that they are aware of the unique challenges you're facing and working to bring the ability to register to vote to you. Many are exploring, if they haven't already installed, satellite offices on your campuses. And for those of you, of course, who aren't going to be on campus, working with your local clerks in Michigan to similarly make sure you have access if you or others want to register to vote is going to be key. So remember, registration can happen online and by mail if you want to get the application at michigan.gov/vote. And in those last 2 weeks, you can still vote. Even if you're not registered, you just have to go to your local clerk's office and do it. Even up until 8 p.m. on election day, you can register and vote at your local clerk's office. The second big thing is making sure you can get your ballot this year. And there's 3 ways to get your ballot in Michigan. Number one is to request it at michigan.gov/vote. and have it mailed to you. Now, it doesn't have to be mailed to your address where you're registered to vote. It could be mailed to your campus address or any other address that's convenient for you. It's basically how you get your ballot. You have to request it and you tell us where to send it. You tell your local clerk where to send it. You can also go physically to your local clerk's office beginning September 24th and pick up your ballot right there. And you can even vote it and return it at that same time as well. Or, of course, you can show up at your precinct, your local precinct that's connected to your voter registration address on election day, and through that, receive your ballot and return it just as you would voting in person on any other election day. The third thing to focus on is once you get your ballot, how do you return it? And of course, if you vote in person on election day, you can do it all there. If you vote in person early at your clerk's office, getting your ballot, you can vote it, you can return it right there as well. But importantly, you can also return it through the mail or at one of the close to 1,000 drop boxes we've put all throughout the state of Michigan. Now, those multiple avenues to return your ballot all enable you, regardless of how you return it, to track your ballot as well at michigan.gov/vote. So that's it. That's the basic how-tos for voting this year, but also there's a dark cloud looming on the horizon, and it's going to get darker and darker and louder in the weeks ahead, and that is the cloud of disinformation. And we're already seeing with the current news cycle chatter about voting twice, that there are voices out there that seek to confuse the process and sow seeds of doubt among all of you in our electorate about whether or not our vote will be counted and our elections will be secure. So let me just confirm to you, your vote will be counted, our elections will be secure, and our elections will be an accurate reflection of the will of the people. What we need your help doing is really pushing back against the information that's flowing all through various channels, and we'll target a lot of students as well, saying if you vote, you'll lose your, or if you change your address, or if you request to vote by mail, you'll lose your ability to have a federal student loan or something like that. You know, there's nothing out there that you'll risk or lose by voting. You'll only gain, of course, your voice in the process. So as you hear those myths, as you hear that disinformation, please help us dispel it. And please help us make sure that you and your fellow students know the truth about voting this year. The last thing I'll just say, and I'll plug, is our poll worker program. As many of you know, we have in order to ensure that our ballots are counted efficiently and that our polling places are fully staffed, we need your help. Consider signing up to be one of democracy's most valuable players, Democracy MVP, as we call them. At michigan.gov/democracy MVP, you can sign up to be a poll worker. Close to 1,000 people already have signed up, but we're probably going to need a few thousand more to fill all of our needs. And that is a significant way that you can participate even after voting. And ironically, with all this chatter about voting twice, the reality is you can't vote twice. It's illegal, but you can vote early. And then if you still really want to be involved, you can sign up as a poll worker and be there on election day to watch other people vote in person. That's a great way to be super civically engaged this year. Don't vote twice. But that said, consider being an election worker. Know that you'll be filling a really specific need this year. And again, you can sign up at michigan.gov/democracy MVP. So thank you again for the opportunity to swing by today and say hello. I don't know if there's time for questions or if there are any questions, but I know Sally and Sarah from my team will be here as well to answer questions if you need.
Thank you so much, Secretary Benson. This is your second time joining our summit here, and we're so appreciative. We know there's so much going on, but you always make time to talk to students, to talk to administrators, to remind them about how important this work is and how your office and your team is ready to help in any way we can. And I think we all agree that the changes that have been happening in Michigan to really make voting easy and accessible for all, especially for students, have been super beneficial. And I think it's going to mean that we're going to have just a huge voter turnout come the general election. So we're really excited, and we're really excited to continue working with you.
Likewise, we're here to work for you. So tell us what you need, and we're excited to do everything we can to make sure, even with all of the other uncertainties and changes happening in your lives, that you can have the certainty and clarity about how to vote this year.
Thank you again. And as she said, if there's any questions, feel free to drop them below. We're going to be having Sally and Christy, who are going to really go in an in-depth a process of walking us through Michigan election law and some of the concerns or questions people are having. So feel free to drop them below, and we will definitely have them answered later in the presentation. Thanks,
All right.
Dr.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
With that said, I'm going to go ahead and go back into the Michigan Students Vote campaign, but I'm going to reverse it a little bit and go back to the beginning and introduce one of our main partners again that helped us out with the campaign, and that has been Sally Marsh from the Michigan Secretary of State's office, to just give you a reminder of how important this toolkit is, and then we'll go back into walking us through that. Thank you, Sally, for all that you've done, and we're excited to hear from you.
Hey everyone, thanks Samaya, and it's great to be with all of you today. And Samaya, just let me know when you want me to share my screen with the website.
Sounds great. With that said, so let me just change this, go back to you'd think after all of the Zoom sessions we've done, I'd be an expert at this. Okay, so back into the toolkit. As we said, we have key messages. So key messages and goals around getting out the vote. So you'll see over here, registering and voting early, making a plan to vote, planning ahead to encourage those voting, your rights to register on election day, to become a poll worker, which you heard a little bit from Secretary Benson and probably will hear a little bit later today. And then of course, to become a democracy fellow with organizations like Campus Vote Project and CEAP and others, to be those students on the ground who actually get to do this work. This is probably one of the best times to be a democracy fellow because there's so much going on, and there's always so much that we need from students to contribute to that. And then of course, if you guys haven't already, I really, really recommend bookmarking, saving, sending this page to everyone, michigan.gov/vote. It really is like an all-encompassing page that has all the information, the links, the resources that you need to get out the vote. There's another website that that Sally's gonna be talking about a little bit today that's really student-specific, which is gonna be great. But for a general one that has all the information, definitely visit michigan.gov/vote and follow the Secretary of State's Facebook and Instagram and their social media platforms to get updated on that. I'm going to go ahead and mention important dates and deadlines, but at this time I'd also love Sally to chime in since you can probably better walk us through this process of some important dates for us to remember.
Yeah, absolutely. So this toolkit, just to add to what Samaya is saying, we're really hopeful that this gives you kind of all the information you need in one place to kind of plug and play for whatever kind of outreach you're going to need and you're going to want to do. And, the first thing about that is a calendar, right? Like what are the important dates and what are the timeframes in which different messages are the most important things? So just briefly, and we can talk about this more at the top of the 11 o'clock hour when Christy and I kind of walk through things, but on September 24th, absentee ballots are available, and clerks will begin mailing the ballots then. An in-person absentee voting, which we can talk more about later, will be available in person at your clerk's office if you want to vote early but don't want to vote by mail. In October, a couple of different important deadlines there. The October 19th date, that's a Monday, is the last day to register to vote online or by paper form without going in person to your clerk's office with additional documentation. So between now and October 19th is the easiest, best, from a kind of efficiency standpoint, time frame in which you can register to vote. You've got more options, less in person. Starting on October 20th, as Secretary Benson mentioned, that's when you're going to need to go in person to your clerk's office with 2 forms of identification, basically proving where your address is that you're registering to vote at. The good news is when you go in person and do that, you can actually vote at the same time. You can vote by absentee ballot, but that is an important deadline and an important date for all of you to understand. I'm happy to answer more questions about that. And then the weekend prior to the election, clerk's offices across the state have to be open for 8 hours for voter registration and things like that, which will be hopefully helpful to students around the state. And then finally, November 3rd is election day, and polls are open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. If you are in line before the polls close, you will be able to vote. And students at that point who still have not yet registered to vote, and voters across the state, are eligible and able to go to their clerk's office to register.
Thanks, Allie. And as she said, we'll hear more details about that information in one of the other panels. Now we have important links. Of course, these are linked from the michigan.gov/vote website, but we just wanted to host kind of those 4 to 5 links that everyone is always looking for in a separate section, so you have that. And now probably one of the most awaited things, which is the campus engagement calendar. So I'm going to pass it over to my colleague Hira, who's going to walk you through the campus engagement calendar, and I'm going to do my best to show you the calendar as she's talking.
Yeah, thank you, Sumaya. Yeah, so the Michigan Campus Engagement Calendar is kind of going to be a statewide tool for admin, students, and other organizations, similar to CVP. And basically the purpose of the calendar is to have a centralized space where campuses and students can sort of host any student engagement activities or events. And it's going to be pretty useful, especially if you're trying to coordinate events across the state. The calendar also notes like some commemorative days, such as like Constitution Day or National Voter Registration Day, which is really nice because you can sort of center events around those dates and have events for students to keep them motivated and just engaged. The campus engagement calendar can be found in the toolkit as Sumaya is showing us here. Sumaya, if you can just show the section that has the calendar, maybe even open the calendar just so people can get a feel of it. Yeah, so the link would be in the subheading that says campus calendar and also within the table of contents. So from either of those places, you can just click and you'll be taken to the calendar. If you would like to submit anything or any events that you want on the calendar, you can always email Sumaya. Her email is actually within the toolkit. And again, to answer a question that was in the chat, this is something that we will distribute. It's going to be available for all of you after the summit, and hopefully on the toolkit will be on the website as well, so people can access it from there. And Sally will tell you a little bit more about that.
Thanks, Hira. And as you can see, the difference in these sections, just to highlight that from the important dates and deadlines in the calendar, is the additions are some of these other days like Constitution, National Black Voter Registration Day, National Voter Registration Day, some of those national and statewide events that we wanted to make sure that administrators and students kind of remember when they are, so you can organize around those days and have them in this calendar. And like we said, it's a living document, so as we see new events pop up, and also if you're a partner organization on this call and you know of something that you're doing statewide, definitely email it over to us and we can add it to the calendar. And then a reminder that there is an embedded code that you can get for this too, so if you want to put it on your website, we can send that over to you. And so as we walk through this toolkit, as you can see under all of the dates, there's also suggested actions that you can take. So different events or social media posts or things of that sort that you can plan around these important dates. Next, we have the sample newsletter section. And so that section, speaks for itself. So we included some sample newsletter language, sample emails dedicated to certain topics, but something easy that you can really just copy and paste into an email. If the dean of students is sending it out or your departments are sending it out, something easy that you could just plug and chug. Some more emails. And then this is probably a really great section, also sample social media posts. So we'll talk about the power of social media later, but sometimes it's really hard to on the spot think of posts. So we wanted to come up with some really main ones that you can probably, if you have applications like Hootsuite and you can schedule your posts out, you can do that right away. You can do that today and have them ready to go. Or just some general language that you're able to just copy and paste. You can edit it to your liking, add maybe your school mascot saying or your school saying into it to personalize it as you post it on your social media platforms. And then, of course, as important, something really important that we really want to get out there so people can really start following the work is by hashtagging. So we have 2 different hashtags. We're doing Michigan Students Vote, as you see over here, and hashtag Michigan Voting. So anytime you post, if you can include that, it's just an easy way that people can click those hashtags and just find the information that they need. Another section is our graphics section. So we were trying to put it all in here, and we thought the best way to do it, since there's so many things being created, is to create a Google Drive. So if you click on this link right over here, it'll take you to an accessible Google Drive that has many different graphics that have been created by our team, by the Secretary of State's office team, the Know Your Rights campaigns. There's some from SEEP. So there's so many ones that are kind of floating out there, and we wanted to find a place to kind of store all that information. And so if you click in here, you're able to download those graphics and use them as you wish. And then we put some of the kind of those main ones up here about same-day voter registration, you know, return your ballot, about the absentee stuff that happens, reminders about polls, and so on. And then, of course, we walk you through the voter information that Sally is going to be walking you through with Christy later today. So some of those important things to remember for voter registration, same-day voter registration, absentee voting, and then we have frequently asked questions, as we stated. So we kind of, as we were talking to the Michigan Student Voting Council and the questions that kind of always come up for the Secretary of State's office, we compiled some of the main ones and we put them right over here. And then additional resources for ballot guides. So these are nonpartisan guides and websites that have been vetted by our team, Secretary of State's office team, and partner organizations who are C3 who do this work. Really easy, you just plug and chug your address and you'll be able to receive nonpartisan voting guides. And then this area will be continuously added to, but there's a lot of resources from Campus Vote Project, the All-in-Campus Democracy Challenge, and we'll continue adding there. So with that said, this is a rollout of our toolkit. I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Sally so she can walk through the website with you and show you where it's going to be hosted and kind of what the website's going to be looking like.
Thanks, Sumaya. Let me try to share my screen 1 second. All right, can you all see it? All right, so so this is also a living website. So I want to say up front that if any of you have any recommendations or suggestions, things that you think are unclear or should be better placed or oriented, we at the Secretary of State's team, the whole purpose of this is to be helpful to students. So let us know if there's something that we can do better. Just to kind of walk through a couple of things here. You'll see the Student Voter Toolkit in Word document format is able to be downloaded right here. We have created a kind of step-by-step guide to voting because that's something that we've heard from students over the past year, basically checking your voter registration, registering if you're not yet registered, and then making your plan to vote and kind of what your options are. I should have said this at the beginning, but you can actually view this yourself at michigan.gov/student-voting. And so maybe Sarah or Christy, if you could put that in the chat, that'd be great. And just to walk through a couple of the things on the homepage, the michigan.gov/vote site is prominently featured because, as Sumaya said, it's really an amazing resource for all things voting, and we'll talk more about that, Christy and I will, in a bit, but there it's linked to that. You've got a link to register to vote, what you need to do. Out-of-state students, some information about how to register to vote, some voting FAQ, and then what I'm really excited about is the Take Action button, which we can also continue adding to, but it has the link to a Student Voter Toolkit, becoming a poll worker, requesting a presentation, information on our Collegiate Student Advisory Task Force. I know some of you are on this call, and then how to get your campus involved. And so we'll continue adding to this as well. And let me see if there's anything else. Similarly here at the bottom, resources on the Michigan Collegiate Voting Challenge, the Michigan Advisory Task Force. This link on candidates and proposals goes right to the League of Women Voters site that Sumaya just mentioned that's in the toolkit. Becoming a poll worker, voting Mythbusters, which again, would love to, kind of have your continued input on. It's basically right now a page of different myths that we've heard from students and talking to them, and would love to, help you all educate your fellow students. And so that's really the website. It's the idea again is to kind of be a hub for resources that are aimed at students, but also directing you towards michigan.gov/vote, which is really a resource for every voter. So feel free to click around, play around with it, and if there's anything that you think should be changed or is confusing or you think could be included, we are all ears.
Thanks, Allie. Before we kind of end this toolkit portion, if anyone has any specific questions that you would like us to answer about the toolkit, so that's the website, the engagement calendar, and the toolkit itself, you can do so at this time. You can go ahead and just either put a question up. We have a question, Sally. Under the Take Action button, the task force page option is not found.
Oh, well, good to know. We will fix that. Just a kind of funny aside is that this morning there was an issue with all of the state of Michigan website uploading and updating function. So our team is frantically trying to make sure all the links on this work. So we will look at that. Thanks.
I don't see any other questions coming through, but as we said, feel free to reach out to us or throughout the program today. Reach out to us if you have any questions. I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Madeline.
All right, so we're actually getting into break a couple minutes early, so that's good for everyone else. All right, sorry, Zoom was making me think I didn't unmute myself. So go ahead, turn off your cameras, go fill up your coffee or your water, and then head back around 11, and we'll see you soon.
Just want to let you all know we're going to be starting up again in a couple minutes.
Okay, Carly, take it away.
Welcome back, everyone. Please remember to keep your mics on mute. Our next panel will cover Michigan state election law and voting tips. Please welcome Sally Marsh and Christy Dugan from the Secretary of State office.
Hello, everyone. Hope you had a great 10-minute break. While I'm sharing my screen, I just wanted to introduce my colleague, Christy Dugan from the Bureau of Elections. Christy's amazing. She's a wealth of knowledge for all of us. And so, Christy, if you want to wave to everybody and maybe say hello while I'm pulling this up.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me and always including me in helping your fellow students get registered to vote and vote in Michigan.
Thanks, Christy. All right, can you see my, oh, here we go. This is being strange. Just 1 second. Like this. I think my dual monitors was confusing my computer, so just give me 1 second, guys.
In the meantime, while Sally gets that fixed, a reminder to anyone, this is going to be a really important session of getting that important Michigan election law information. So if you have questions throughout the presentation or something you want to make sure that's addressed, again, just drop it in the question and answers section or in the chat, and Sally and Christy will definitely.
Hey, can you guys all hear me now? Okay, great. Can you see my screen too? Are we ready to go? Awesome. All right. Thanks for bearing with me there. So we're going to go through essentially what you should know about your voting rights, how to register, and then how to make a plan to vote. But really wanted to leave most of the time for questions because I know, the more you know about elections, the more you learn about elections, the less you know. So would love to be able to answer questions, and Christy will be a great resource for that as well. So I'll take you through a couple of slides and then we'll open it up for questions. Kind of one overall note I wanted to mention here, obviously every state across the country has different rules and details about how to register to vote and how to cast your ballot. And so for those of you who might be talking with friends from campuses, friends on campus who might be an out-of-state student or people who would want to vote in another state, one resource that I would direct them to is canivote.org, which is maintained by the National Association of Secretaries of State. It's a great way to make sure that people are getting the right information about their voting rights if they're in a different state other than Michigan. But obviously our focus here is in Michigan. So the rest of the presentation, I'll be talking just specifically about our voting rights here in this state. So first of all, are you registered to vote? That's the first question, right? So how do you register? In Michigan, as Secretary Benson mentioned, you have the right to register and vote up until and including on Election Day. That said, I think especially in this time of social distancing and kind of uncertainty, it's best if you register early. If you talk to any local clerk, if you talk to any election administrator here in Michigan, for those of you who are already engaged, already ready to go, you should make sure that you're registered early, check your voter registration early, and then encourage all of your fellow students to register early as well. There are a couple reasons for this, but mainly that at that 2-week mark that we talked about, October 20th, so up until October 19th, you can register to vote online with a Michigan driver's license or a state ID card. And you can also use a paper form that you can mail into your clerk if you don't have a Michigan driver's license or ID. It's a lot, there's less that you have to provide, and it's kind of a lower threshold to getting registered if you do it before by October 19th. Starting on October 20th, so that means like within 2 weeks of Election Day here in Michigan, you have to register in person at your clerk's office or at your clerk's satellite office. And you have to bring additional proof of residency, which sounds a little complicated. We can talk more in detail about that if you'd like, but it's actually just showing an official piece of documentation, whether it's a utility bill or documentation you might have from your university or college of what your address is, in addition to your driver's license or state ID card or other method of kind of demonstrating your identity. And so once you are registered to vote, again, you can register at michigan.gov/vote. I highly encourage all of you to check your voter registration at michigan.gov/vote and make sure you know what your registration status is and where it is that you're registered to vote. In Michigan, you have a couple of different options in terms of making your plan to actually cast your ballot. You have the right to vote from home here. This is also called voting by mail or voting absentee. Important to know that that's the same thing. here in Michigan. So if you hear voting by absentee ballot, voting by mail, voting from home, there's a couple different terms that people use. They all mean the same thing, which is essentially that you are voting by what's called an absent voter ballot that will be mailed to your home. To vote by mail in Michigan, you must request your ballot online or via paper form. Again, sort of like voter registration, there are two options for how to request it. And you can vote and register to vote, and then you can also have your ballot sent to either your home address or your campus address. So if you are registered to vote at your home address, but you're living on campus and you want to vote in your home, you know, your more permanent address, then you can request to have your ballot sent to your temporary address at your school. I did this when I was in college. If you want to register and vote in your college campus community, that's totally an option as well. And then you'll just have your ballot mailed to that address on campus. You can also, in Michigan, that's not the only way you can vote, of course, you can also vote in person, whether early or on election day. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that. But first, I want to just dive into voting by mail a little bit more. So when you apply to vote by mail or vote from home, voting with an absentee ballot, you can apply online. Be prepared to have your driver's license or state ID card and the last 4 digits of your social security number when you fill out that form, which is available at michigan.gov/vote. You can choose to have a ballot mailed to you. Again, you can choose which address you want it mailed to. And you can also choose at michigan.gov/vote to be placed on the permanent list, the permanent voter list, as it's called, which means that for every election moving forward, you will get an application for an absentee voter ballot sent to you. So that means, you know, there are 4 elections in every Michigan year. And so you would get sent that application, that invitation essentially to vote by mail by signing up for the permanent list. You know, if you fill out the paper form for requesting your absentee ballot, that request form, be sure to sign that with a legible and distinct signature. This is not the time to do what I'm sure we all do when we like go get a coffee and scribble something on the screen for our credit card. This is, you really want to take the time to do a legible, distinct signature. If you apply online, it is going to use the signature that you provided with your driver's license. So that's the signature that's going to be captured as part of that process. And this is important because that signature is then matched with the signature that I'll talk about in a second that's on the outside of your absent voter ballot. So again, applying online, or you can apply by paper form, which is also available on our website, and return it to your local clerk by mail or dropping it off in person. Your local clerk also has these forms available if you were to go in person to register and then request as well. So then actually voting your absentee ballot, be sure to read all of the instructions and use a black or blue pen. This is not something to rush, and because you're voting from home, you have time to make sure you do it correctly. Again, that signature is really important. You have to sign the outside of the envelope. Don't forget to sign the outside of the envelope. Once you've completed your ballot, you put it in the secrecy sleeve, you put it in the envelope to return it to your clerk, and then sign that outside of the ballot. And you know, you don't have to vote for every candidate or proposal, but you want to make sure that you look at both sides of the ballot. Make sure you're not, you know, unintentionally missing people who you would like to vote for, or ballot proposals or other things that you actually would like to vote for. This is just a picture of what the ballot envelopes look like. So it comes with the blue, it comes in the mail with the blue envelope to you. And then the secrecy sleeve that I talked about, you'll place the ballot in the secrecy sleeve, place the secrecy sleeve in the green envelope, and then again, sign the back of that envelope. As you can see on the envelope, it tells you, please sign the back of the envelope, and then return it to your clerk. So again, returning your ballot, you voted, you filled it out, you've signed it. Now what do? You have to get it to your clerk's office by 8 p.m. on election day. That's your specific city or township clerk, not any clerk in the state. So you have a couple of options here. So you can drop it off at the clerk's office at their location or at a satellite office. Again, it needs to be your specific city or township clerk. And it just needs to be received by 8 p.m. on election day. You can return it to a drop box that Secretary Benson mentioned. There will be drop boxes all across the state. Again, really important that it's the drop box for your city or township clerk, not any drop box. So if you are voting at your home address, but you're going to school and you're living in Ann Arbor, don't drop it in the Ann Arbor City Clerk's drop box. Put it in the mail. And then if you're voting by mail and you want to return it by mail, which is a great option again for the scenario I just described, please get that ballot in the mail early and encourage all of your friends to get that ballot in the mail early as well. Send it 2 weeks before the election is kind of our recommended time frame. So absentee voting, that's one option. The other option you have is to vote in person. You can vote early, again, at your clerk's office or satellite office, starting at the end of September. If you want to do this because of the pandemic and because of COVID-19, I would recommend that you double check your clerk's office hours. Some of them, might be doing appointment or might, have a kind of hybrid situation happening at the local township or city office. So just double check that before you make the drive. And then you can vote in person at the polling place on election day. Again, 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. If you're in line by 8 p.m., you're allowed to vote. One quick plug again, as Secretary Benson mentioned, we really, really are looking for poll workers all across the state who can help make sure that that in-person option is safe, secure, and accessible for all voters on election day this November. Because of the increased volume of absentee voter ballots that we expect, as well as the COVID-19 pandemic, clerks need more poll workers than they ever have before.
Oh no, I think we lost Sally a little bit. Christy, did you want to chime in until she gets back on?
Sure, I can. I don't have access to her presentation. She's just contacted me. Hold on. Yep, her computer froze, so she's trying to get logged back in. So as far as being an election worker in Michigan, just know it's a long day, and clerks are always looking for people with good skill sets and willingness to be there early in the day, which would be like a 6 a.m. report. Some jurisdictions do run shifts where you might only work part of a day, but we know that we want to make sure that folks are able to work all day if possible. So there's a lot of different formats. You might be helping voters who walk in to a precinct on election day and processing all of them through the electronic poll book. You might be processing all of the absent voter ballots and not necessarily interacting with voters walking through the door. So it's kind of important to get to know where you would be working, and it does require that you apply with the city or township clerk's office where you want to work. You only have to be a registered voter in Michigan. You can work anywhere. So you could be going to school in Ann Arbor, but say, I want to work in the city of Detroit, and that is possible. Or you could be going to school in Marquette and be registered to vote in Grand Rapids, but still certainly work in Marquette. So you would apply with a local clerk and go through training. It would be a mixture, possibly of virtual and in-person training. The clerks have been working at this all year to work on socially distanced training, if it is in person, but they may follow up with a number of videos and resources for you to read to prepare. But hopefully they will pair you with a seasoned veteran election worker that can guide you through that day as well. So I'm not sure if should we try to take questions or?
Yeah, just texted me, said we can take any questions. I think you may be able to see some of the question and answer, but I'll read them to you. So one of the questions was, what are the types of inconsistencies in your signature on the outside of the envelope and how you signed up on the registration card? Middle name, middle initials. So a little bit about that.
So the main thing that we encourage clerks to focus on is to make sure that it's the voter who signed it. It doesn't have to be an exact signature as to what's on file. So my folks named me Christy Lynn Dugan, and I like to sign my name Christy L. Dugan a lot. But if I was in a hurry and so forth, I could just put KL Dugan and move on. And what we tell clerks is that they are to simply look at the main letters of the name and make sure that they are the same and they look like the voter did that. Now, everybody has pretty good tendencies on when they lift their pen when they sign and the pressure that they make. And so there are a lot of things that are taken into consideration to if it doesn't look exact, that they say, it looks like this voter did sign this application or this ballot. And then if there is a signature that is in question, the clerk is encouraged to follow up with the voter, and they will use all means necessary. If they have a email on file, which it's great if you do include that in your voter registration application, they will email you, or a phone number they will call. They will send a letter in the mail. They will track down mom, dad, aunts, and uncles if they can in the small town and say, hey, can you get a hold of this, of your niece or son or daughter, and they need to sign this. Now, if you're contacted by a clerk because your signature was questionable or you forgot to sign your ballot, there are options. And the voter, if there's time, the clerk can spoil that initial ballot and reissue you a new ballot. Or you can go to the polling place in person if you're close enough and be issued an in-person ballot because your AV ballot was invalid. So there are processes to do that.
Awesome. There's another
Everyone, I'm back.
Really?
My computer literally just shut down. So thanks for your patience. And I'm glad that Christy is with us so she can, help answer your questions.
Thanks, Allie. We're just running through questions. So another one is, what happens if someone drops their absentee ballot off at the wrong clerk's office?
We want to prohibit that as much as possible. The Michigan has 1,600 different or 1,500 different locations or city and township clerk's offices that process AV ballots. And so that's a pretty big system, and it can get quite burdensome to forward a number of AV ballots. The clerks will try their hardest to forward it on, but we do not want to make it a regular practice at all to put it in the wrong location. So ultimately, you'll know that it will be significantly delayed. So there is, the clerks will do their best to forward it on, but timing might be such that the manner in which they can get it to the new location wouldn't get there in time to be counted.
Yeah, I would just add to what Christy said that, clerks do their best to pass along any ballots that are incorrectly returned to them. That said, because in Michigan we have that hard stop of 8 p.m. on election day with our law, we haven't changed our law to accept ballots after that point. It has to be at your individual clerk's office at that time. So the best thing to do is to verify that you are returning your ballot to the correct clerk before there's a chance for it to get into the wrong hands.
Awesome. There's another question around what if you mess up your ballot but don't realize, or maybe realize later, for example, you mark 2 candidates when you can only do 1. Is your whole ballot ruined, or do they contact you? Or how do we contact you?
Okay, so there's a couple things going on there. If the voter realized that they marked too many, or maybe somebody says, hey, did you see so-and-so's running for a certain office, and you realize you didn't flip your ballot over and vote the back side, that's usually what a lot of voters realize as they go on. If time allows, contact your clerk in writing. You can just scribble a quick note with your signature and take a picture of it and email it to your clerk and say, I need to spoil my ballot, and you reissue me another one. You don't have to say why, and they will spoil the original ballot and reissue you another one. Now, you might say, oh, I think I just screwed up that one race and we're getting close on time. What happens with that ballot, the way that the tabulator is programmed, it will only discount that one race that you might have voted for one too many people. And so the rest of your ballot will count. It'll just be that one race that's discounted. So, if it's early enough, you have the opportunity to ask for another ballot. Always remember that all the city and township clerks in Michigan are open the weekend before the election, particularly on Saturday. So if you're got your ballot from home or even locally, you would have the opportunity to hopefully go to the clerk's office and ask to spoil a ballot, and then they'd be able to immediately reissue you one as you stood there, and you could vote it and hand it back. So that's kind of the whole planning your vote situation too.
And a follow-up to that is, if you make a mistake on your ballot, can you use whiteout to fix it, or do you need to request a new one?
I would not encourage you to use whiteout to make any corrections. Now, Michigan does have what we call second chance voting, where even if you issue a ballot by mail and you were home with it and you crossed out your vote, in a very obvious fashion, to where you're like, I didn't intend this one, and then you vote the other candidate or other candidates that are possible. What will happen is when the workers are processing that ballot on election day, the tabulator will say, it'll give a warning. It'll say, oops, in this office, this race, too many votes were marked. And so it causes the workers to look at that race, and they will see that there was an obvious ballot correction made through Xing out, and they will set that ballot aside for duplication. It's the only time that they can determine voter intent for that ballot. So they will take a team of bipartisan election inspectors, and they will duplicate the voters' properly marked votes onto a new ballot. And in the race where they have the overvote due to the ballot correction, they will take the new mark and take away that correction, so that the tabulator will count that race appropriately and then tabulate that new ballot for that voter. So that's really getting in the weeds, but kind of know that there are processes in place that are executed on election day to preserve every vote for a voter. Reason why we cringe at whiteout is that as the ballots go through a tabulator, there's a screen and it all gets scanned and read. We don't want anything to come off onto the screen and kind of screw up tabulating other ballots and break down on that tabulator. So If you don't have time, scribble through, make your mark, and the team of election workers will correct that for you on election day.
And now I think you all have another reason to be an election worker, because I think Christy just really illustrated how important they are for so many different things that we might not even think about as voters. And so if you want to be part of that process, part of making sure that every vote is counted, and that our elections are secure, sign up at michigan.gov/democracy-MVP.
Great. And then I just had another question that was submitted to me for both Sally and Kristen. Basically, they were asking, how can you work around any mail delays, or what can you do if you don't have a car and you're unable to get to your clerk's office, or just any tips you have for this upcoming election, given that there's so much to think about when submitting your vote, whether you're submitting it early or going to the polls. So just any general tips surrounding that.
So my kind of overarching tip would be that this is the year where you need to make a plan to vote. And you need to make a plan to vote for yourself, and then encourage everybody in your life who you know to make a plan to vote, especially for students, because of the kind of unique challenges that you all face with changing locations, and potentially some people might be online where they thought they were going to be in person, and things like that. So I would just really, really encourage that you think right now about how you want to exercise your right to vote, and then make your plan to do so. And part of that is, and you'll see this in the campus engagement calendar and a lot of the stuff in the toolkit as well, is doing everything we can to encourage people to vote early, to request their ballot early, to return it early, to do everything that they can to make that plan and execute it early. That's the best piece of advice I could give, sort of regardless of what option you choose. Even if you realize that you still need to register to vote within that 2-week window, go within that 2-week window. Don't wait until election day. Go the day before, go 2 days before, 3 days before, a week before, register to vote, and vote right there. Your local election administrators will just benefit from you voting and making your plan and executing it early.
So ballots are available pretty much the week of September 21st. So clerks have them early. So if you already have your application file, or if you're going to be working with students to get their applications on file, with whether it be the clerk in the community that where you go to school, or where you register to vote, or back home at your parents' home, you can make sure the application is on file, and then you would be the first lot that gets your ballot sent to you. That will give you more time to return your ballot. We are trying to institute a number of tracking measures for ballots. The first one is at michigan.gov/vote. You can always log in to that with your voter information and see that when your ballot was sent. So a date would be there when a ballot was sent, so you can kind of know when to expect it, when to go look in that mailbox, because I know hardly any of us get mail anymore. And then you know when to look for it, and know that mail is taking 5 to 7 days for sure. So even when you see that date, kind of plan when you're going to check that mailbox, and then when to get it back out. Do so as early as possible, and then you can go back in and look at your record, and you'll see it was received, and the date it was received. Then that means that local clerk has that secured in their office.
And Hira, if this would be a good time, I can show everybody what michigan.gov/vote looks like, and what Christy was just describing, if that works for everyone. So let me just, hopefully my computer won't crash this time. So can everyone see my screen here? So this is the homepage of michigan.gov/vote. If you type in michigan.gov/vote, this is what you will see. You can see that you've got a couple of different options for navigating this screen. Your voter information, vote at home, register to vote, vote in person, accessible voting, and finding your polling place. You can also see right here on the side are the quick links to register to vote online, apply for an absentee ballot online, and find your clerk. And then if you if you go to kind of the other tab that I opened, which is my own voter registration, you can see where you're registered to vote, that you are registered to vote, when the next election is coming. When a ballot preview is available, it'll be available here so you can see what you're going to be voting on this year. This is what Christy was talking about in terms of tracking your absentee ballot. So you can see that for the upcoming election, my application to vote by mail was received back in March. And when the ballot is sent, I'll have a note here with that date. And when it's received, I'll have a note here. This is also where, like I was talking about earlier, signing up with the permanent absentee voter list, you can sign up to vote absentee every year by clicking this yes button. Every election by clicking this yes button here. A couple other things to note: you'll find your polling location information here, where it is, and then your clerk as well. What's your clerk's name? What's their email address? What is their contact information, and when are their business hours? This will also be where you'll ultimately be able to see ballot drop box availability as well in your area. So I don't know if anybody has any questions about michigan.gov/vote, but this is, I think in terms of your own personal voting information, just a really great resource for you to share farm-wide.
All right. Thank you so much to the Secretary of State's team. You guys have been great throughout this entire process. I'm now going to turn it over to Sumaya, Ryan, and Ira to talk about student voter engagement strategy.
All right, just give us 1 second when I get this PowerPoint all set up. Okay, Ryan, are you on too?
I am.
All right, awesome. Well, you've already heard from Hira and I, so a big welcome to Ryan, one of our amazing partners from the All In Challenge. We're excited to go through this portion with you about student voter engagement strategy. As we've mentioned many times throughout the webinar, we really want to make sure when you leave this webinar, you have the tools, the resources, and the strategy and tactics in place. So we hope that this session will really give you some of those things, like this is what I can do right away, right after this webinar. So with that said, I'm going to pass it on to Hira.
Great, thank you, Saya. Yeah, so I know we're all very curious how we can get engagement up, especially when a lot of our campuses have started going virtual and it's just a new playing field that maybe some of us are not really familiar with or just figuring out how to transition it all over. But I thought I would go over some fellowship opportunities because I think they can be a great way for students to get involved and for faculty and staff on campus to get an extra hand to conduct some activities that they're doing. So these are just 4 fellowship opportunities that I know of. I know there's a bunch more. If you have any that you would like to share, feel free to put a website or something into the chat box. So what I can really speak to most, obviously, is the Campus Vote Project Democracy Fellowship, because I've been leading that for the past couple of months. And I think it's very similar to the SEEP one, and I'll just kind of get into it. Basically, these are fellowships where we sort of we reach out to admins on campuses who are already doing this kind of work, and we kind of hire 2 to 3 fellows, either on a semester by semester basis or throughout the entire school year. So I'm talking September to April or May. Most of these, if not all of these fellowships, are actually paid. So the students do get a little stipend for the work that they're doing, which is great because they deserve to be compensated for all the hard work they're putting in for getting out the vote on campus. And essentially what we do, at least here at CVP, is we kind of pair the student with the admins who are doing the work. And oftentimes admins already have sort of a game plan or a voter-friendly campus sort of plan. I don't know if Sumaya wants to speak to that at all, but you can chime in if you need to. And they basically carry out activities. So a lot of these things in the past have included like podcasts or building websites or things that student-led events to inform their peers, because I think one of the best ways to reach out to students is through other students, because they know each other the best, and honestly we can learn from them as much as they can learn from us, so it's great to have them. Yeah, and so it's a great experience for both. And I know personally, just being on the job, I learned a lot. There's a lot of like things that that I didn't know before about like the details of the election process. So it's just really cool. They bounce ideas off of each other, and just sometimes they build state guides, state voting guides, or things like that, just to sort of make the information centralized and readily available for their peers. And I think SEEP operates in a very similar way in that both fellowships are paid, they're statewide, or they're trying to be statewide if they aren't already. And if you're interested in getting involved, my email is up. You can either send resumes, or if you want to get your campus involved in this, feel free to reach out to me. For SEEP as well, I have their website on, and fellows, if anyone is interested, you can go ahead and directly go onto that application. Same with the PERGIM one. Those are very similar to the SEEP, except I think their focus is more grassroots organizing, and they are a nationwide organization. So students can apply from anywhere. And then I do want to get a little bit into the CVP Work Elections Fellowship. I've also included the application for that. Basically, it is an election year, so it's like in addition to having fellowships on campus, this one is more geared towards recruiting poll workers for the upcoming elections. And I won't get too much into the requirements of what poll working are, because I think Sally and Christy covered it a little bit in their sections. But basically, they're just recruiting students to they're recruiting their peers to basically come out and volunteer or work as poll workers during the upcoming election, because we know there's going to be there's likely going to be a huge deficit, I guess, in poll workers this year. So it's important to have those guys out and doing the work. And for all of these, you can apply online. Even if the deadline's passed for some of them, I would suggest that if you're interested, you should still apply, just because sometimes coordinators who are running these programs haven't actually fulfilled their quotas, and we're always looking for students, and things change a lot. So it's definitely worth looking into. And then again, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat box. I'm happy to answer them to the best of our ability.
Thanks, Hira. So again, take this opportunity, become a fellow on your campus for any of these organizations to really do this work on the ground. The second thing we wanted to touch on is the power of social media. So a couple of things to remember as you go through this is, one, you saw in our toolkit, and you'll see in the campus engagement calendar, that there's a lot of different events like National Voter Registration Day or Muslim Voter Registration Day, or specific things to get out certain votes or attract certain communities to come get out the vote. So use your social media platforms to amplify those stories and to engage your community online spaces. So I say that even more so now, because social media and emails and things of that sort are really the way that we're getting out this information. It's the information that you're receiving on a daily basis, even from your schools and so on, because a lot of campuses are not allowing organizations to do like on-site voter registration or things like that. So definitely find a way to amplify that work online. And there's many platforms, as you all know, like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. TikTok has really unique videos that people share on there. You all have your school websites and your school platforms like Moodle or Blackboard that you may be able to engage via that. And maybe even a blog channel and so on. But as you do that, traditionally we post flyers, or we post a little, post with a hashtag. But really the two things, and Ryan and Hira can probably attest to this, and other people who, all of you who are in this work, is the two things that really get people out are storytelling. So as you post things, tell your story behind what you're doing, right? So the challenge that you're facing, the choice you have to make, and the outcome of how it's going to be made. And as you do it, not posting a flyer is not the only way that it can be done, but maybe it's posting a video. So people, like a 30-second video to get voters out, to get them engaged in that space, so they can see, why you're so motivated, and then they have a story of their own that they can tell. Take advantage of hosting virtual events. So basically every event that you do on campus should be able to be done in some sort of virtual format. So debate watch parties, it's so easy nowadays. A lot of, you'll see in the campus engagement calendar, we highlighted when like the first presidential debate is and the vice presidential debate and so on. And you're able to kind of just host that party via Facebook. So you can take it off, ABC if they're playing it or another channel that's playing it, and go ahead and share it onto your own campus website. Virtual town halls. So this could be like statewide, but also very much so focused locally. So if you're inviting all the candidates in a certain race that are running in your school area, doing that in a Facebook platform. A lot of candidates are really receptive to doing things of that sort. Virtual panels, so things like this where you can engage the audience. And I think Sally is still on, but if I know a lot of campuses have reached out in regards to the mobile Secretary of State office that's no longer being able to function because of COVID, but I know Sally and her team are working on other platforms of bringing that information to you, such through webinars and things that you can host on your campus. So, just reach out to organizations like ourselves and folks like Sally who can bring this, webinars or PowerPoints and slide decks that you'll be able to share in a virtual format. I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Ryan.
Thank you so much, Samaya and Hira, and everyone who's been involved in this, especially our wonderful partners at the Department of State. My name is Ryan Drysdale. I use he, him, his pronouns, and I'm the Associate Director of the All-In Campus Democracy Challenge. Hopefully everyone can hear me. And I want to talk just for a minute or two about couch parties. What are they? They're virtual text banking events. And there are two options. One, campuses can organize their own, and this can be for 20 volunteers or 2,000 volunteers to text. And the All-In Challenge will be hosting 3 live couch parties as well that you can promote to have your students attend. So what is a couch party? It's an opportunity to do friend-to-friend text messaging. We use an app called Outvote, which is free to download, and there are pre-written scripts and answers in the app, which is great. So someone who might not be familiar with election law and how to do voter registration, all they need to do is download the app, sync the contacts in their phone to the app, send those pre-written scripts and pre-written answers as needed. And it's a great way to have that friend-to-friend messenger, who's a very trusted messenger, send messages and encourage people to turn out to vote. So we have actually our first training on how to organize a campus couch party today at 2:30 p.m. I'll drop some links in the chat. You see the other 3 training dates. Those will be recorded and posted on our website. I'll also post the web page for couch parties on our website where you can get more information. And at the bottom of that page is a form you can complete to get more information and make sure you're on our list to follow up with if you're curious about learning more. We have toolkits, videos, sampled agendas, all the resources you need to host your own event, and as many of them as you want. And we see this as a very COVID-safe way to have virtual engagement at a mass scale and a pretty easy event to organize. So I'll share those informations in the chat box, and we hope that you'll join us in these couch parties, whether you host your own or you join us on the internet and throughout the rest of the fall when we host them.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for Ryan for speaking to us about couch parties. We're really excited. It sounds like a super cool initiative. Again, if anyone has any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat box. And I think Ryan's just going to share the link to the couch parties. And we can go ahead and move on to the next panel if there are no questions. All right. So next I would like to introduce our student panel. So we have Madeline Dale, who is one of our CVP fellows who is moderating the event. And then we have Tuhin from University of Michigan, another CVP fellow that will be a panelist as today, Ian Berlin from Oakland University, and Erica Neal, who is part of our student advisory board. So Madeline, I'm just gonna go ahead and let you take it away for this next section.
All right, thank you. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and jump right in. So our first question is going to be, how can we recognize our own privilege and utilize our position on campus to educate our peers, for example, about the Black Lives Matter movement?
I can start if you'd like.
All right.
All right, so yeah, sorry, my name is Tuhin Chakravorty. I'm one of the CVPLs at University of Michigan. What I've noticed is that, at least when I work on my college campus, is that people are very often aware of their own privilege and the issues at hand right now. And the big challenge for us as voter activists is to get them to the polls and make sure they know how to vote. So I've actually devoted much of my time to not so much focusing on the political aspects of it, because my goal is to be like nonpartisan and not really focus that much on the issues, but rather tell them, okay, this is how you can vote during the special time, how to request an absentee ballot, because you'd be surprised by how many politically educated people who are not particularly aware of the voting policies of Michigan, especially if they come from out of state instead of U of M. So I just to wrap things up, I prioritize the technique of executing a vote as opposed to the political issues in and of itself.
All right, Ian or Erica, do you have anything to add to that?
I'd just say that like one of the things that I've been working on is trying to get like the student groups that are involved in that sort of activism, like reach out to them, see what they want to hear from like our voter participation stuff. So reach out to those student organizations, and because they're a lot of times already involved in the work and they might just need a couple more resources that we already have, and giving that to them, letting them reach out to their students, their members, is a better way that I've found to do that.
All right, and then I just got a message that Erica's mic is not working right now.
Erica, if you'd like to type in your answer into the chat box as you get it working, we'd love that, because I know Erica has a great response for this question as well.
All right, I'll give her a minute to type that out, and we'll.
You all hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, there it is. So
All right.
sorry about that. So again, my name is Erica, and my response to that question is, well, first I'm going to preface with, I'm a student organizer in Virginia and California simultaneously at the same time, based in Oakland, California. So my perspective from it was engaging students or giving them, the students, a reason to vote is really something that is one of my favorite tactics. And the Black Lives Matter movement happening right now, even though it's been something that's been going on for years before the election, it's just another reason for students of color and students in minority groups to go out and participate and to register their friends and their family members. More and more students that I've worked with have also taken the perspective of maybe not politicizing it, but just making sure that their voice is heard, because from our perspective, our rights are not political. They're human rights, and we should have already had these kinds of things. So with that being said, like, we make sure that we're keeping our opinions as very true to what we stand for, but also making sure that there's like some fire behind it. So making sure that we're engaging the freshmen and listening to what their concerns are, giving them a space to express their, how do I say this? Just express their concerns about what this means for their safety, what this means for their education, and then piling that all together into why they should vote. So that was my answer to that question.
All right, thank you. I'm glad that you got your mic working again. So moving on, our second question is, due to the virtual changes on campus because of COVID-19, what is a practice or a tool that you're using to get out the vote? And then whoever would like to start can go ahead.
I can start with that one. So at Oakland, one thing that we're right now pushing really hard is the online voter registration. We're trying to get emails sent out. We're trying to get departments involved in sending out that information, showing people how to do it. We just had a video produced on campus about how to get registered, how to do all that, and we're trying to get that sent out to students. And then I think just once we get that, showing them how to get their absentee ballot, just giving them all the processes and showing them you can do these online and you can send it in mail. You don't have to do it all. You don't have to go anywhere to do anything.
Just to follow up on what Ian said, like things that you have been very similar, just talking about like the online voter scene, like make sure that people know to register online until 14 before the election, and once again circling the Michigan.gov link for that. But another thing I found to be particularly effective is that to keep pushing the immediacy of absentee voter requests, that you can request a ballot right now, because as someone who was a poll worker last August, I can tell like right now that the poll working, the election staffing scene right now is much more chaotic than it was in previous years, and in-person voting will likely be far more inefficient because of that. So I've been focused a lot of my time on making sure people can explore the option of voting absentee as much as possible in Michigan so that they can vote efficiently. And once again, just telling them that they could request a ballot right now has been a very effective way of getting them getting the request, because they know that they don't have to wait a very long time for that.
I can follow up with saying that most of this work is going to be done by, of course, other students, as it should be, and other student organizers. So giving your student organizers actionable items and achievable goals to do it within the time frame of now and between the election time is a really good way to begin to have that conversation of how you can adjust. A lot of us made plans and action plans where we didn't necessarily include a whole pandemic. So making sure that you're able to help other student organizers revamp their plans. Something that I've been doing is creating election day game plans and including social media challenges, since we know that our students are going to be online for most of the time, on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook. Another thing is making sure that for our out-of-state students, that they know that to make sure that their polling location is changed back home if they plan to vote back home, making very short, easy to read, digestible guides on how to vote safely in COVID-19, what to bring with you. So utilizing social media and graphics is one of the biggest things that has helped the organizers that I work with. But I think my favorite tool right now is group chats, because that has so much potential to get to other students that may not be on Instagram all the time, but we all know that we're all in our group chats throughout the day because that's how we interact. So having GroupMe, using the Slack channel, we have a student voting network where students can bounce ideas off each other and stay up to date on what's going on in terms of voting and what that looks like. So we have a lot of tools that we definitely that we took for granted without COVID-19, but that we're starting to utilize now in light of the pandemic.
All right, and so we have a couple minutes to get through this last question here. It should be a pretty quick one, and it's just, what are you most excited about for students voting in the 2020 election?
I can start. So like one thing that I previously mentioned, that this election will be more challenging to vote because of COVID-19 than probably many other elections, if not in history. So the one thing I'm looking forward to is seeing how the student body just not only organizes like ourselves, but also the people who will vote adapt to these changing circumstances, and how voter turnout will look compared to the previous years. Because I believe that it will be even higher than in 2018, 2016, even despite these challenges, and look forward to seeing the determination of the new voters and the returning voters in casting their ballot despite such obstacles.
One thing that I'm looking forward to, and that I've definitely seen more happen throughout both the pandemic, the Black Lives Matter movement, and then leading up to the election, is more and more students coming into themselves. I think a lot of students felt like they didn't have a voice, but when they started seeing the protest happen, when they started seeing different movements and things that we watch, like the NBA and the WNBA and other sports leagues, and they started seeing, even when younger kids started seeing their voices validated on Nickelodeon, on Disney Channel, it gave them empowerment to become engaged into a process that had already made sure that their voice wasn't heard. So we're starting to see a huge movement of people that weren't already involved in politics, or who said that they just didn't want to be involved in political things, realize that politics is something that affects their lives every single day, whether you want to ignore it or not. And so seeing that is probably one of the best things that's come out of this, and being able to have that conversation and discussions around that, about how to keep that momentum going.
Yeah, I mean, I just basically same type of thing. A lot of people in college campuses, this is going to be their first time voting in a presidential election. And so there's a lot of excitement around that, and just being able to see all of that excitement actually go towards something and then finally being able to do something actionable they can see will be very exciting to watch.
That's awesome. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Madeline, for moderating. And thank you to Hin, Ian, and Erica for sharing your thoughts with us. We really appreciate you guys and love hearing your perspectives. Keep up the good work. And now I'd just like to wind down the event with just a little quick, thoughtful activity that we have. So basically what we're gonna do is we're gonna show you a prompt, and we need complete participation from you guys on this one, but we're gonna show you a prompt on the screen, and it'll just say like 2 words, ... and you're just gonna complete the sentence. So I'm just gonna give you a couple seconds to read the first prompt, and then just want you to type it into your chat box, but don't hit send. And then when I count down from 3, you'll all hit send at the same time. So the first prompt is if only. I'll give you a couple seconds just to type in your response right now. And then don't send until I count you down. Just a couple more seconds. And I'll count you down. When I get to 1, just hit send. 3, 2, 1. Awesome. So there's a lot of cool things in here. Feel free to read them. We'll go on to the next one. So this one says, it makes me. Now I'll give you a couple more seconds just to fill this one out in your chat box, and I'll count you down again when we're ready to go. All right, I'm gonna count you down. 3, 2, 1. That's awesome. A lot of really cool responses in here if you guys are reading them. All right, we'll go into the next one. Get you a couple 30 seconds to write your next one. More seconds. 3, 2, 1. Amazing. And we'll go on to the last prompt. When all is said and done. Couple more seconds. All right, 3, 2, 1. Awesome. Definitely take a second to read through some of these responses. You guys have a lot of really great and profound thoughts. And then I'll just let Sumaya close us off here.
Thank you, everyone. It's been nice to kind of sit back and read everyone. Really encouraging. It gives me a lot of hope, and I hope this wind down activity shows you all that it's interesting because all of our thoughts are somewhat similar in some capacity. And when all is said and done, we just want to get out the vote, and we want to do everything in our power to do just that. And as students, and as administrators, and as organizers in this world. I really hope that this webinar gave you that kind of final toolkit, resources, and the hope that you needed to get this work done before elections. Finally, I'd like to extend another thank you to the Secretary of State's office team, Sally, Sarah, Christy, to Ryan from the All In Challenge, to Aaron in the Michigan Student Voting Challenge, from the Big Ten Challenge at University of Michigan, and everyone else who's just been so important in helping us get this done. We look forward to continue working with you all. And reminder, this toolkit, the slide deck that we presented, as well as the one that the Michigan Secretary of State's office presented, we'll send everything in a follow-up email later today. So thank you so much and have a wonderful day. All right, for the few of us that are left that are on, thanks guys, let me stop the recording.